where my thoughts escaping, home, where my music's playing, home, where my love lies waiting silently for me.
This is Drew Brown, an attorney at the Greensboro Law Center. We represent over 1,000 North Carolinians who have gone to Virginia and South Carolina and taken out high-interest car title loans. We contend that these loans are illegal if they're given to North Carolina residents. They violate our usury statutes, and really the people of North Carolina are the victims. We've had success working some of the cases out, and if you hire us, you can do so on a contingency fee, which means you don't only have to pay us out of the money we get back for you. Give us a call, 336-478-6000. That's 478-6000, the Greensboro Law Center. Thank you.
Closer to my dream.
Welcome back to RealSavvy. Hope everybody's enjoying the weather in the Northeast. I know y'all got beat up a little bit, but I'm back this week with Vinroy July. If you've seen my most recent column sitting on RealSavvy.com, I've had the opportunity to get to know Vinroy over the past 6 months, year, more like, guess. And Vinroy has such an interesting, dynamic background, one of the most dynamic backgrounds of anybody I've ever met or interviewed. I'm going to go immigrated from Jamaica to the United States, right? Vinroy, you know, we could weigh in here. Ended up at the Taft School, which is an impressive boarding school up in Connecticut. I don't even know how that happened. Then from there, University of North Carolina undergraduate, Duke Law. I asked you, I'm going to take you back. I tease you on social media. You always ignore my thing. I know you've seen them though. When I talk next with you about North Carolina or Duke,
I just ignore it. I ignore those.
Who you rocking with though?
Carolina, undergrad.
Okay.
You gotta stick with your undergrad. I'm a Tar Heel man through and through, without a question.
Even last season.
Every season, every single season. I was there during the Doherty year, so we were terrible. So it wasn't until after I graduated that we started becoming nice again. But I stuck with Carolina all the way through. So I'm a Carolina man, and I actually have a very interesting story about that. Well, I think it's interesting. So I don't know if you want to continue, but I actually am one of the, if not the only person to have a varsity letter from both Carolina and from Duke. So I wrestled in college. So I won the ACCs at Carolina my senior year. But my freshman year, I had shoulder surgery. So when I graduated, went to law school at Duke, I was kind of just getting out of shape. And so they asked me to come and start working out with the wrestling team. Eventually I got in there and I was beating on the heavyweight. And so they actually had me wrestle him off. And we petitioned the NCAA to give me back my year. And they gave me back my year of eligibility. So I actually started wrestling for Duke. And when I was wrestling for Duke, I used to wear my Carolina shoes that we had gotten specially made for us when I was at Carolina. And in the ACC tournament, I knocked the guy who we had recruited to come to Carolina out of the tournament. But I'm a Carolina guy. Look,
I didn't even know that, because I was just about to go into, now, don't get it twisted to my listening and viewing audience. Vinroy is just not a nerd. He spent how many years were you a professional boxer too? We got to deal with that.
Yeah, I boxed professionally. I boxed professionally for about 7 or 8 years. I had gone up the ranks, so I was, but I was doing this as I was practicing law. But I had gotten ranked by the WBC. I think I was as high as like 25. I was getting offers to go fight in Portugal. I fought in Atlantic City on like a Curtis Stevenson undercard, and I started getting offers to go fight in South Africa and Portugal and places like that, but never took the shot because, quite frankly, I was at a law firm. I couldn't take a month off to go get a fight. And so
I couldn't understand. How did you even train or like go to a fight and have to deal with a judge like the next day? Like,
so luckily, so for me, so I'm a corporate guy, so I never go to court. So all I do is like basically draw up contracts and structure business deals and negotiate on the phone. So I don't have to go to court. So luckily, never had to deal with judges. But I did have one fight where I got clashed. I got a head clash and he split my eye open. I had to get like 18 stitches. And so the next day my eye was like completely like swollen. And had to go into the office. That was uncomfortable, but but it all worked out. And honestly, the lawyers that I used to work with used to love the fact that I boxed. So, they got over it pretty quickly.
okay, well, so that's was the last fight for you?
Nah, so it wasn't the last fight. So I had 21 professional fights. I had 16 wins, I lost 2, and then I had 3 draws. And so, but my last fight was at the point that I was just like, I was working literally. I was on a deal. I was working until 10 o'clock at night, and I was in Baltimore at the time. I was working in Baltimore. My coach, who was like world-renowned coach, Adrian Davis, who had coached Sean Bay Mitchell, he had coached William Joppy. So he had like 16 or 17 world champions. But he at that point was having some difficulties. His wife, rest in peace, was actually suffering from dementia. And so he was having a really hard time getting to the gym. And so I was leaving Baltimore at like 10 o'clock at night after working, driving to DC to pick him up, to go to a gym down in DC that they would let us stay there late at night, trying to train for, at that time, you might train for like an hour. So you're not getting like the good, like real training that you should be doing when you're in a camp. And then dropping him off and then driving back home. And so I was getting home at like 12:30, 1 o'clock at night. And it just wasn't sustainable. Honestly, probably like 1 o'clock at night. It just wasn't sustainable because I then have to wake back up and go to work the next day. And it was just like, I didn't have a very good fight. That was my second loss. And I was like, if this is how life is going to be, it's not worth it. These guys are this is what they do. I can't keep this up and at the level that I'm operating at right now. So after that fight, I just said, it's time to hang him up. And I wasn't getting paid. Let's be clear. Everybody thinks that people are getting paid a lot of money in boxing. When you're starting out, until you make it to like pay, until you get like on like, even like HBO, the undercards ain't getting that much money. I wasn't getting paid basically anything. And so, it just wasn't worth it at some point. So.
Well, I'm not going to stay there. I mean, you have, like I said to my audience, you have such a dynamic, interesting background. You first caught my attention. You and I both wrote articles around the same time regarding opportunity zones. Yours ran in Black Enterprise Magazine, which is when I, first reached out to you. Mm-hmm. If you want to touch on that and where we're at with that, I have particular interest because I'm kind of unsure where we're at right now with the qualified opportunity funds and how that all plays into it.
So I mean, I'm still very, very optimistic about opportunity zones, but I think that we just need to like level set, right? I think there are flaws with the opportunity zone program, but I still think if we're thinking, look, I'm particularly concerned about the advancement of Black and brown people in our communities, and I think 54% I think of opportunity zones are in predominantly Black and brown neighborhoods. So if we're talking about how are you going to get money into those neighborhoods, like, I don't know. I think it's a great program to potentially spur investment. Like, nobody's saying it's going to be easy, but I think that there's a way to get it done. And I think that, quite frankly, people are kind of I just actually wrote another article about this. I think people are too quick to kind of say, oh, look, they have not worked. Well, of course they haven't worked yet. We've been in the middle of a global pandemic. And from my first article, I talked about the fact that the reality is that the vast majority of people who are going to be able to like really, really take like big advantage of the opportunity zones are people who are really wealthy, right? Because, they have abundant capital gains and they have big dollars to be able to use to invest. But the reality is that those people had options of where they were going to put their money anyway, right? They don't have to come and invest in these low income census tracts, right? They're gonna take the best options that were there, like the things that were already penciled that were kind of on the border. They were gonna get that
with the lowest amount of risk.
Right. That's what they were gonna do anyway. They don't have to put their money in these neighborhoods. And so I'm not surprised. And I said this before, the first tranche of investment was always going to go to these projects that are already penciled. The question for me is what happens. Remember, this program, it runs until 2026. You can put your money in an opportunity fund until 2026 and then be able to hold for 10 years. Right. So for me, the real question is what happens on the second and the third tranche, when all these really, really, really good projects as they stand now get invested in. What's the next layer of investment? What are the next projects? Like that's where I care about, because that's when I think you're going to see some real potentially dynamic, changes in projects being done. And so I just think that, you think about the fact that like that the rich people, the people who were going to get the best benefit of opportunity zones, they were going to put their money in the best projects now anyway. And then we had an entire year basically of COVID where we were on lockdown and everything was shut down. In some places you couldn't do construction, and some, people were wondering about what the state of business was going to be and what the economy was going to be. I'm not surprised that that you haven't seen that much movement in opportunity zones, but there's been a lot of billions of dollars have been put in opportunity funds. We just haven't seen like the some of the bigger projects getting funded and finished yet, but it's coming. And so I'm still very optimistic. And I think that for me, I think we have to think about how do you make changes along the edges so that Black and brown people who are in these neighborhoods can benefit. And when I say benefit, look, I think that it's been marketed as, we're going to be able to provide services and potential job opportunities and housing opportunities in these neighborhoods. I think that's great, right? To the extent that happens, fantastic. But I think we also need to be very thoughtful about making sure that Black and brown people actually get to participate in the capital stack, because that's what's been missing. Our ability to actually be a part of the economic growth of our communities is what we need to be focused on. And I think there's a way to do it, but we just have to be thoughtful about how we get it done.
Home, where my thoughts escaping. Home, where my music's playing. Home, where my love lies waiting silently for me.
From the way I thought about it is that we won't see the real impact of opportunity zones until this real estate market crashes. And that meaning that those people with those real deep pockets will look for that typically invest in real estate investment trusts. And as those opportunities run out on the flips and everything, that they're looking for other opportunities to put their real estate money, those real estate investors.
So I'm actually gonna say I'm gonna counter that, because I actually think I think if the market crashes, it's gonna be the worst thing that can potentially happen for Black and brown people. Because what's going to happen if the market crashes is what we have seen historically happen, right?
Yeah.
Which is that there's going to be foreclosures, and Black people are going to be the greatest detriment, because we are more financially unstable, right? As it relates to like our footing in this country financially. Mm-hmm. And so my fear of the market crashing is that what's going to actually happen is that if the market crashes, that you're right. The people who have money, they're going to start looking at those projects. And so they're going to buy a bunch of these properties in foreclosure, and neighborhoods that were historically Black and brown are going to get gentrified because they can get them at really cheap prices. I don't want the market to crash. I want investment alongside existing communities. And what I'm really pushing for at the state and local level is, to the extent that, I just, in my head, the federal law is done. I mean, you might get some change along the edges, but this, what I think that the way that you really maximize the opportunity is instead of only letting the really rich participate, you actually allow people who might not be really, really wealthy, but who might have some dollars that they want to be able to invest. They have disposable income. They have money. Because to be clear, even like most accredited investor is someone who makes $200,000 a year, married, or if they're married, they have make $300,000, or their net worth is $1 million, not including their primary residence. But if you really think about it, a lot of people who are making $200,000 a year, they're not gonna have $50,000 to invest in a project, right? They're gonna have, maybe $10,000, $20,000 they can throw at something, maybe, right? And so my view, and they might not even have capital gains, because again, capital gains is only
over like 250, right?
it's not even that, it's gains that you get from selling an asset, right? But not including your house, right? Your primary residence, any gain over, I think, $250,000, that's not even capital gain. So it has to be above that. So if you have a house that's worth $500,000 and you sell it for $800,000, right? You can only get like only $50,000 of that is capital gains. And if you think about Black communities in particular, we know that most of our wealth is in our primary residence, right? Just the numbers just say that, right? We are not as invested in the stock market as other communities, as white communities, right? And so that's where a lot of the capital gains are being generated, right? Is in the stock market and in real estate investment, real estate, right? But if we have our money in our primary residence, there are so many historical reasons why Black families, real estate, like you don't see that much appreciation in those properties, right? And then on top of that, the first 250 isn't capital gains, so you can't participate. And we're not as involved in the stock market, so we don't have the capital gains. Like, you have to change the system so that it's not just capital gains that get benefits from investing in an opportunity zone. I think if you tweak that system and allow a person that might make $200,000 and has $10,000, $15,000 that they want to invest, and it might not be capital gains. If you allow them to get some tax benefit from being able to invest in those neighborhoods where some of them might have grown up, they might go to church there, they might have family members that are there, they understand that community, they're not afraid of that community. If you allow them a tax benefit of being able to invest in those communities, I think you can really see some transformative investment opportunities coming about.
Do you see that as more of a realization in the Biden administration to carry that over and grow with the?
So I hope so. I think that I think people have been paying attention to the fact that, the dollars aren't really having transformative, cataclysmic, like catalytic type investments right now. And so I think everybody's thinking about, how do we make opportunity zones right? Or how do we make opportunity zones like be more of a benefit? And I think that this is the only way. You have to allow people who have historically been underrepresented and excluded from the markets to be able to participate in the markets, because that's where wealth is created, right? I need to be able to invest. I need to be able to not just get the handout or get the job. I need to be able to put my money, and instead of putting my money in the bank and getting 0.1, 0.2% return, being able to invest it in a project where they're giving you back 12, 15% returns or more, right? And if you can use tax benefits to enhance that return, that's just a cherry on top, right? And when you do that, you actually potentially start really doing the things that are going to allow for these neighborhoods to thrive, to allow for the wealth gap to not grow as fast as it currently is, and give people who have historically been underrepresented an opportunity to participate in the market. And that, to me, is what's the most important.
Now, there's two more things that you're personally involved in. One is the Black Business Initiative, and I'll let you roll with that as far as.
Yeah, so this all came about. So as Chris mentioned, I'm a partner at my law firm. I'm in Baltimore, Miles and Stockbridge, and when George Floyd was murdered, I think a lot of people's eyes were open to what Black people have been saying has been happening for years. And so now all of a sudden, everybody was running around trying to be talking about social justice. And it was just very reactionary. Everybody was just like, what can we do? What can we do? And, they came to me and asked, what can we do about this? I was like, honestly, I don't want us to be trying to solve for social justice issues in the ways that you guys are thinking about it. The reality is that much of these issues, and it's not just George Floyd, because let's be clear, what we have seen has been happening before Trayvon Martin. Like, we've seen this. It's just that it's now more visual because of iPhones or phone
Technology.
cameras, right? Because of technology, but it's been happening, right? And so, but more deeply ingrained, what the issue is, it's really economic, right? It's a socio-economic issue that causes these disparities in how Black men are treated versus their counterparts of other demographics, right? And so my view was, if we're really going to do something, let's not try to be reactionary. Let's get to the root. Let's try to address the economic situations of these communities. And how can we do that? As a law firm, I knew that very often, I knew this from my own experience, that many people, when they're started, black companies don't have as much capital on the front end when they're starting off their businesses, because for a number of reasons. Most companies, the first round of funding is from friends and family. Black families don't have that kind of generational wealth, so they can't go to their parents and say, "Can you give me $50,000, $100,000 to start this company?" And so what does that lead to? It ultimately leads to, when you're trying to start a business, which is already hard, you're already hustling, you're trying to save as much money as you can. And you're trying to see things that you can do yourself, things that you can avoid paying for. And unfortunately, one of the biggest things that people try to cut costs on is legal assistance. So setting up the entity right, helping them to negotiate their deals. They just think they can do it. And what ends up happening is that, first of all, most companies fail, right? Just across the board, right? But if you don't have the proper structure, you don't have the proper legal advice, that makes it even that much harder. And then, so you're already putting yourself at a disadvantage where it's already hard as heck to start a company. And then on top of that, even the ones that actually do end up being quote unquote successful, by the time they get to the attorneys and the attorneys are looking at their documents, they're realizing that, hey, you negotiated this terrible deal and you're stuck because you're under contract to do something. And so our thought was, why don't we provide legal assistance on the front end to allow these companies to get off the ground? And so what we said was that we are going to provide up to $20,000 worth of free legal assistance to these Black-owned businesses, with the idea that this is let's be clear, this is something that it's doing good, but it's ultimately, the intent is that you are able to become successful and that you can get off the runway. And once you start soaring, we want you to come and remember us. Like, we helped you get there. We want you to come back and be able to use our services. But the idea is to let's give you some runway to get the company off the ground. And then once you're successful, we can figure out, how else we can be of service.
I almost, as we were getting prepared for the show, I almost had you're involved with so much. I almost confused the Black Business Initiative with the virtual economic conference that you have coming up too. So I'll let you know with that one.
Yeah. So again, look, I think over the last 3 to 4 years, it's become very clear to me, what my skill set, how it uniquely positions me, right? Because of the fact that I'm a corporate attorney, I'm helping people figure out, how they're financing things, seeing the issues that people have. I'm very clear about it's economic. And if we're talking about the advancement of our people, we have to deal with the economic reality. And quite frankly, what COVID has driven home to me is that I'm really afraid, because to me, the chasm of the wealth gap is widening, right? Because, the way that I think about it is that, even if like somebody has $1 million, somebody has $100,000, and they both get 10% return on their money, the gap actually widens if they get the same return, right? So that $1 million now turns to 1,100,000, and that 1,000 only turns to 1,100. And so what was a $99,000 or a $999,000 gap has now widened even further. And so we are putting this conference together because we were like, we need to start having some real discussions about like, how are we going to actually impact what's going on? And so we actually pulled together just a fantastic panel. And I'm actually really proud because of the fact that it was actually people who I knew who have been kind of just crushing it, or like who are in my orbit. And so the keynote speaker is actually a frat brother of mine, Sean Rochester. He's the author of The Black Tax, The Cost of Being Black in America. Super dynamic book that just talks about how at every step along the way, Black people are economically disenfranchised. And so we have, like, after him, there's a series of panels. So one is on the solving for the lack of access to capital. So talking about what are other alternative structures that people are utilizing to deal with the very clear reality that Black people have had an issue of having access to capital in this country. The other panel is on what is government's role, because we have to be very clear. Wealth, policy is very key in creating the wealth discrepancies that we have seen in this country. I mean, even to the fact that capital gains taxes are taxed at a lower rate than the ordinary income that we have is a part of what has created this wealth gap. And so if it's been such an instrumental role, you need to be very clear that they also have a role in trying to address and make things better. And so talking to, representatives of the Millikan Institute, representatives from local governments, like talking about how can we think about policies that we can implement to allow for Black people to close that wealth gap. We also have one on, the entrepreneur's journey, because we know that Black companies, that we have high rates of entrepreneurship, but oftentimes it's not because of desire, but it's out of need, right? And so we have more Black companies, but they only have one employee, which is themselves. Right. And so we have to talk about what does that journey actually look like? How do you become successful? How do you actually scale? How do you get to that next point that you can start having, employees and start paying these things? Right. And then the last one is about funding, because until we start talking about that, we know only 1% of venture capital money goes to Black and brown founders. And so we have a panel comprised of some Black funders who are specific. Some are specifically talking about how do you get to diverse and underrepresented communities, and we can talk about how we get funding to those people. And so it's just going to be a super dynamic panel, like set of panels, and they all tie into each other, right? And so we're going through the life cycle, and I just think it's going to be a great event. You can obviously, I'm going to make my plug here. So you can register for the conference. It's only $25, which is nuts because these conferences are normally significantly more. But it's bit.ly/Power of the Collective. So the name of the conference is Power of the Collective. It's on Eventbrite. And look, we have to work together.
If I missed it, when is it?
It's February 27th. So February 27th. From 11 o'clock to 5:30. So full day of programming.
That's a Saturday.
It's a Saturday, February 27th.
Okay. Well, look, anybody who's watched this segment, it was a power-packed rich information that you provided, knows that you're busy. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on and making my audience real savvy.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, Chris. I see what you've been doing, so I'm always happy to try to be helpful and collaborate. So thanks.
Thank you.
You know how to help your clients find the home of their dreams. And we know the perfect mortgage can make that dream come true. We are Guarantee Rate Affinity, a joint partnership between the third largest retail mortgage lender and your company. We're here to help you look good to your clients and sell more homes. How? First, we make the process as simple, seamless, and awesome as possible. And that starts with our expert loan officers. You might have met some of them as they work alongside Coldwell Banker agents. Clients love our easy digital mortgage, which can have them ready to make an offer in minutes. We have over 100 loan products with some of the fastest turn times in the industry. And because our loan experts are fueled by the most advanced mortgage technology platform, we can help you and your clients at any time, from anywhere. Plus, you'll love tools like Loan Status Monitor that keeps you in the know, and Flash Close that shortens closings from hours to minutes. Above all, we're committed to the belief that your success is our success. So, when a buyer needs a mortgage referral, bring it home to the loan officers who work right alongside you to get dream homes closed. We are Guarantee Rate Affinity, and we are your mortgage company.